Hello. Welcome to Q-SYS Control QuickStarts. My name's Jeff Perkins and I'll be your host today. Today's episode is called Named Components. In this episode, you can expect to learn that there are multiple ways to establish internal control of Q-SYS components. Control components allow for basic configurable customizations. They're pretty good. My favorite, though, are named components. Named components allow scripts the unique ability to control components directly with no hands. I know, I'm overexcited. The key idea is that scripting with named components is an amazing superpower. So hang on, I'm going to teach it to you. Let's dig in. Close that, get that out of the way, and let's sort of get a little basic overview of our design here. I have a very simple system schematic. We have 3 HDMI sources coming into an NV32, which is acting as a 3x2 video switcher, something it's really fantastic at doing. Additionally, it can take in streams now. It can be your core. It's really the cat's meow. It's fantastic. So here we are, 3x2 switcher. And a very common way to implement control is to actually open up the decoder right there. And here you are. You have buttons that you can use. In fact, let's emulate and we can watch this thing go in real time. Here is what it's telling you. It's telling you that it is on HDMI 3. That is input number 6. And if I press button here, HDMI 1, it says, oh, now I'm on HDMI 1, which is input number 4. And if I press graphic 1, it says graphic 1 is the current source by name and input number 1 by number. So it really is drag and drop. You can pull these out, put them on your UCI, and that really can kind of be the end of the story if you want it to be. It can be that simple. But one of the things that, one of the trade-offs of this is that you're going to see really all of the available sources. And so if I come to my drop down here, I can see, oh, there actually are 6 available sources that the NV32 could route to output 1 in this case. And they come with the names graphic 1, 2, 3, and HDMI 1, 2, and 3. But maybe that's not what you want to call them. I mean, it is what they are. But maybe you want to give more descriptive names for HDMI 1, 2, and 3. And maybe you want to change the order in which they're presented. It's possible, without scripting, to provide this level of customization. We're going to make use of the control component here called the selector. Now, I have to wire our selector up. There it is. Ding. Now, I know this is like one of my pet peeves. I don't like spaghetti messes. Yes, I could totally use a control flag here, but I'm making a point. But let's open the selector and let's go back into emulation. And let's say that on our UCI, what we really would like to do is we would like to provide the options of HDMI 1, 2, and 3, and then graphic 1. We really only need to provide 4 for our particular scope of work in this particular project. And we want to do it in a particular order. So we called them HDMI 1. So we'll update the labels here, HDMI 2 and HDMI 3. And what did we call that? Graphic 1. And so that is 4, 5, 6, and 1. And now that we're emulating, so this is live, this will totally work. I have a couple of options for how I present the controls. I can use these selector buttons, and there we are. We're going through the list. And you can see the NV32 responding appropriately. Right, there we are. We've routed number 5. We've routed number 6. We've routed number 1. And our drop down here is giving the presentation in the drop down in the way that we want it. HDMI 1, 2, 3, graphic 1. So customize the order. We also can customize the label because HDMI 1 is, while it's totally true, your user probably doesn't want to know that it's HDMI 1. In fact, they probably are more interested in knowing that it's their PC and that the HDMI 2 is their wireless presentation and HDMI 3 is the digital signage, and that graphic 1 is the logo, so that they can just show their logo if they want to. Now, right, our buttons still totally work, but also our combo box now is updated with user-friendly names. Control component here, the selector, it's really pretty nice and it works pretty good. But like one of the things that, you know me, you've seen me in several of these videos, you know that I love scripts. And one of the things I love most about scripts is making it work without wires. In fact, that's the whole point of this video. Name components is a methodology in which the script can control these other components without any wires. Our selector here, of course, has this spaghetti noodle running all the way across the page, and I've done it for dramatic effect, but we can do it differently. All right, let's close that. And one of the first things that you have to know about using name components is that we actually have to give the component that we want to control a name. In fact, let's open properties over here. There it is. We have to give it a code name, a secret code name. Okay, not quite so secret, right? We need to know it. Let's come over here into properties, right? We're over here. Oh, this way. I think maybe I'm pointing the right way. It's always weird in the camera. Let's scroll down. And one of the things that you'll notice is that there is this thing called script access. So currently, this guy's code name is NV32H_1, which is fine. It's unique, but it's not that great, and it's not really that memorable. And because I won't remember that, but I will remember this. James Bond. Let's make its name be James Bond. And we want to set its script access, in our case here, to all. Right? Script would also work, but all is fine for our purposes. And there we are. Let me shimmy this over here so we can watch it work. And let's get that back out of the way because we don't need it. Let's open our text controller and split the screen so that we can see. And now we'll go back into emulation. So what we will see is that we have 4 buttons. Okay, I could have also made the combo box, but this is really about a proof of concept. So let's take a look at my script. I've done a couple of things. I have declared some variables and constants here at the top of the page. So for example, these are constants that, yes, they're variables, okay, of course, right? But I'm treating them as if they're constants. K graphic 1, 2, 3, HDMI 1, 2, 3, AV 1, 2, 3 is 1 through 9. You know where I got that from? Right here, right? Here they are, right? Remember, graphic 1 is indeed input number 1. HDMI number 1 is input number 4. I've just made a list of variables and treating them as constants, and they're going to hold my input numbers. I've also made some constants here for my output numbers. K output 1 is 1 and K output 2 is 2. Part of the reason for doing this is so that when I get down into my script and I want to route video, I can use these constants, which make sense to me as a person in ways that saying 4 doesn't, right? It makes sense to say route HDMI 1, and we'll let the computer figure out that it's actually number 4. It makes more sense to me. It's important that code makes sense to me as a person more than it makes sense to the computer because I have to debug it. So I write it for my purposes. You probably should as well. Okay, now some of the fun things is Remember how here in the selector, we'll open the selector back up, I put them in the list that I wanted them, right? PC, wireless, digital signage, logo. And that was HDMI 1, 2, and 3 in the graphic. I've done the same thing here. I'm making an array of inputs as I want them listed on the UCI. I'm making an array for my outputs. And then the magic, the secret sauce here is line 35. Line 35 is what maps my identifier, dev NV32, to that specific component in my design. Remember James Bond, because that's the name I could remember. It's its code name. So there we are. We are identifying dev NV32 with the component whose code name is James Bond. I know I'm corny, but it's for teaching purposes. So what do I want to do? Well, right, I got some functions here. I'm going to route video, and I've written some iPairs loops for my individual buttons here. And I'll pull this down here so we can make it make sense, right? Buttons for outputs 1 and buttons for output 2. This is BTN switch out 1 down here. I've got 4 of them. So here is their event handler for IDX, CTL in iPairs on the array of controls. If you don't know what I'm talking about, remember way back, like the first one that I made, the first one of these QuickStarts I made is called arrays of controls. Go check that one out if this looks confusing. What we're doing is we are setting the event handler for each of the controls in that array of controls. And what do I want it to do? Well, since it's the buttons for switching on output 1, we're going to call func set video route, and we're going to pass in 2 arguments. We're going to pass in the input, and we're going to pass in the output. So which input do I want? Well, whatever is at switcher input for that index, and we're going to send it to the output of whatever output is an A switcher output at K output 1, which indeed is just K output 1. Okay, I made it scalable, but in this case, it's a little silly. But this reference here works really good. Button number 1 is, right, so when I press, right here, when I press button number 1, it's going to drop IDX into this array, which is going to turn around and tell me, oh, button number 1 corresponds to input number 4. That's how I made that abstraction layer. That's how I made that little connection. So when we look at our function says tell dev NV32, tell its particular control, which is at HDMI out, HDMI underscore out underscore the number of the output, i.e. in this case 1, dot select dot index, close bracket, dot value, set it to the input. Where did I get this? That's a great question. If I go to tools and if I go to view component controls info and I select the NV32, we get a big old list. And this big old list tells me all of the controls on the NV32 that I can manipulate. And good googly moogly, there's a bunch of them. But as I look around and I sort of figure it out here, it's this one, HDMI.out.1.select.index. That's the one that corresponds to select by number. How did I know? Because I hovered over this thing and it tells me it's the output 1 select by number. And in my list here, it tells me, oh, output 1 select by number. It's a little bit of Where's Waldo, but it's easier than Where's Waldo. But that's how I figured it out. So this is the component dev NV32, which again, remember line 35 tells me, oh, that's the thing called James Bond. On that component, there is a control called HDMI out one.select.index, and then I'm going to manipulate its dot value and change its input. And when I do that, then I write a little note to myself that it changes the input. So let's see it work. So ding, there it is. That should put it on button 5. So button number 3, remember if I press button number 3, it should put me on HDMI 3. And there we are. I'm on HDMI 3. And if I press button 4 should put me on K-Graphic 1. And K-Graphic 1, of course, is input number 1. And so there we are. And it's working. My buttons are working. It's fantastic. I really love this thing. Lastly, because I have created this internal link, I also can write event handlers working back in the other direction. Here is a particular event handler for dev NV32, and I look at its event handler. So dev NV32's HDMI.out.1.select.index, right? This box, every time this box changes, that's a change of state. That trips the event handler. What do I want to do when that event handler goes off? I actually want to update my script. You know why I want to do that? So that I have two-way, real-time feedback. Real feedback. Real feedback. That's what you should always do. You should always give real feedback if you can. And because I'm going straight to the device, it means that if I walk over here and I press the button on the device, my script updates. If this selector is still out as a control and people use it, and they press the button, and they put it on digital signage, my script updates because the selector changed the NV32. The NV32 let me know in my script because I wrote it to. My script updates. So that's also one of the great things about using scripts with named components is that you can get two-way real-time feedback in ways that the selector doesn't do very easily. It just doesn't. The selector is really great at giving me, right. It is really great at letting me tell the NV32 what to do, but it's kind of difficult to get the information back from the NV32 into the selector to present the way that I want it to. It's not wrong. It's just different. And I really, really like named components in scripts. All right. So there it is. I did it in the text controller. It turns out, of course, you can also do it in the block controller. It looks kind of like this, and we'll quickly show it. Let's split the screen and shimmy this over so that we can see it work. So it basically looks exactly the same. Here are my my constants that I was talking about. Same constants, same arrays, same functions, sort of. So again, we've talked about this a number of times. The block controller, because of the way that it really works to try to make sure that you don't make boo-boos, sometimes it restricts the ways that you can do things. And so I actually have to write two functions, a function for setting output 1 and a function for setting output 2. I can't just have the one function and it works both ways. Really, it's driven by this. This isn't a thing that I can treat as a variable. It's something I can manipulate, but it's not something I can treat as a variable and drop in. It just means I have to write two functions. And so here are the two same loops that you saw for handling the array of controls. And then lastly, here is one of the event handlers for when things change on the NV32 so that I can update the buttons in my script. So in fact, if you want to see them all work together, there we are. Ding. So, right. My block controller told output 1 to go to HDMI 1. The NV32 did its thing, and then the NV32 also talked back to the text controller, and the text controller updated its feedback as well. Again, the selector is a little bit in the cold, but when the selector tells the NV32 what to do, both my text controller and block controller script responds appropriately. I really think this is fantastic. So with that, I know it was a little quick, but you can rewatch the video. You can recreate this. I'm pretty sure at some point this is going to be, this file is going to be associated with this video, and you'll be able to actually probably play with it for yourselves. If you want to see what is the script look like for the last output, this is it. Hit pause. Okay. So what did we learn today? What we learned today is that scripting with named components really is an amazing superpower, and it has no strings attached. They really are my favorite. And you can make it work both ways. Real feedback. With that, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again real soon.